Hello everyone, and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, the show where Whitney and I take a look at every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I'm Tennille.
And I am Whitney, and today we are in 1972 and we are watching The Adventures of Pinocchio from Italy.
Man, Pinocchio is another one of those stories that
We've seen a lot of. But actually not.
Yeah, Pinocchio's name is invoked many times. Actual Pinocchio stories?
Because, we also have Borantino, which is, the rip-off Pinocchio.
Right. But I would still, because it's so similar, I'd still count it as Pinocchio stories.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
I want to say thank you to Anonymous for finding this movie for us.
Mm-hmm.
They did not disclose their name, and that is A-okay.
Yes.
But thank you for finding this movie for us either way. This was a pretty faithful adaptation of the book, which means it does not mean that it was a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, that really sums it up, though. It's a fairly faithful adaptation of the book, The Adventures of Pinocchio. And if you know The Adventures of Pinocchio, it's a pretty, episodic little book.
Yeah, every chapter is something completely different. Pinocchio gets in new hijinks, and it feels very stilted, and this would work a lot better as a show, or a book or a show.
A book?
Not a movie that has to wrap up in an hour and a half.
It did not. It felt so much longer than an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm. But it was only an hour and a half. But every 5 to 10 minutes, we're doing something new. And it just keeps going, and none of the previous things have any stakes because Pinocchio will constantly learn or do a bad thing, learn that was a bad thing to do, and then he'll cry about it, and then he'll be better, and people just are okay with this.
Well, and then he won't be better.
Yeah, and then he'll immediately go off and do another bad thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, so plot synopsis time. I can't do all of it. They literally go over the entire book. Any chapter that they decide to skip, they still show, in a storybook form, scenes
Pinocchio went on many more adventures.
show him getting trapped in, a bear trap and being a pet to beavers or something. And
Weasels, yeah.
Why are we... You don't need this in an adaptation.
Yeah, you could just not.
You could just say those things never happened. Or just okay. Alright. Anyways, Geppetto gets some magic wood and he chops a small boy out of it because he wants the boy to do tricks for him so that he can make money. But Pinocchio's a little shit, and even before he's finished being whittled out of the wood, he's already being a stinker.
He's already causing problems.
Mm-hmm. Whenever he is finally completed, he immediately runs outside, and Geppetto's like, come back here. And then Geppetto's finally catches him and all right, I'm going to take you home and beat you up, you stupid freaking doll. And the police hear him and they say, you're going to jail. So, Pinocchio has already caused his creator to go to jail.
Well...
And we're 5 seconds into this story.
I mean, okay, when you say it like that, it doesn't sound like Geppetto going to jail is a bad thing. But, the context in which the scene plays out makes this so much more awkward and weird.
Uh-huh.
Because the police, stop Pinocchio, and they're like, here you go, Geppetto. And Geppetto's like, thanks. And he's like, Pinocchio, you've been very naughty. You need to learn your lesson.
And then the townsfolk are like, are they going to beat his son?
Well, yeah, because I don't even think Geppetto really says anything all that violent. The townsfolk just assume.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we've got to take this child away from this man. And so, they do, but then Pinocchio just goes home to an empty house and he ends up burning his feet off.
Uh-huh. Oh, and he kills a cricket.
Oh, yeah, and he kills Jiminy Cricket.
Not Jiminy Cricket.
No,
just
but...
an old cricket that is Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah.
He kills the cricket with a hammer, as children are wont to do.
As he does in the book.
Anyways, Pinocchio's very sad because he burned his feet off and there's nothing to eat in the house. And he's like, I should have listened to my father, even though that wasn't really a thing up to this point.
Right.
And then his father comes home and he's like, I'll be a good boy now.
Lies. All lies.
So Geppetto sells his coat in the middle of winter to buy a school book for Pinocchio so he can go to school and learn. Pinocchio goes to school, except he doesn't go to school. He instead goes to the fair and sells his book for 4 pennies. That I don't think a coat is equivalent to 4 pennies.
No.
Dumbass child, which is the point, but even still.
Right.
He goes to the puppet show, and the other puppets are also alive, and they take him backstage, and then the puppet master wants to burn him to eat his food, and this whole scene goes on for 3 minutes, and it's really dumb.
There is a huge back and forth here where the puppet master is like, I'm gonna burn you, Pinocchio.
And then Pinocchio looks sad, so he's like, well, maybe I won't burn you, but then I'll burn something else, and Pinocchio looks even more sad. And then eventually he gets paid 4 gold coins.
Well, no. The puppet master's like, actually, okay, I won't burn you, so instead I'm gonna burn my other puppet.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's like...
And then Pinocchio's like, no, don't burn him, burn me instead. And the puppet master's like, okay, I won't burn anybody. I'll eat my food half cooked.
Yeah. And then he finds out Pinocchio is poor, so he gives him 5 gold coins. And then he's going home, and then he's stopped by a cat and fox/wolf, depending on how you want to read the adaptation.
Yeah, the dub says that these characters are a cat and a wolf. And I'm just looking at them and I'm like, I think this is, not just because, traditionally this is a fox and a cat, but I'm just like, this is a fox and a cat. This is not a cat and a wolf.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, They go on, a really, really long, pointless adventure where they steal his money. But, it goes on for, 10, 15 minutes, and I'm like, you could have just kicked him in the face and stolen his money, guys.
Right, they try and trick him to bury his gold in this field, but it takes forever to actually get to that point, because first they decide they're going to go to an inn and eat some food,
and then force him to pay, and then pretend to rob him in the middle of the night, and then when that doesn't work, they hang him.
Yeah, and still don't take his money.
They still don't take his money. And then the blue fairy is like, I'll save this stupid child. And then he continues to be bad, and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. He does a bad thing, and then it turns out good because he cries and learns a lesson, quote unquote. But then he doesn't learn the lesson, and everyone around him, aka the blue fairy and Geppetto, just let him get away with this shit. Over and over and over and over again. And it just keeps going. He goes to school and becomes the best student, but then he immediately gets distracted and taken to the happy children goof off land, and they all turn into donkeys, and he has a best friend in this part who looks like a 50-year-old man in the child's body. God, this character design is really bad.
It's so unnerving.
He's swimming in the ocean, and then he's picked up by a blue giant who wants to eat him because he thinks he's a fish, but a dog saves him because he saved that dog from drowning earlier, and it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. And then eventually he goes out into the ocean because Geppetto went looking for him in the ocean and got swallowed by a fish 2 years ago. Yeah, Pinocchio just doesn't give a shit about his dad, literally lets him go off on his own for 2 years.
It's funny, because Pinocchio goes off on all these adventures, and oftentimes it's spurred on by I gotta go do this for my dad. And then he, immediately gets distracted by whatever shenanigans he's going to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, when he needs to go learn a lesson, instead of returning to his father, he returns to the blue fairy.
And the blue fairy helps him out.
Right. So you know, on paper, he keeps returning to the Blue Fairy when at any point he could have returned to his dad. And he doesn't.
Yeah.
And the Blue Fairy, like, dies, I guess.
I don't know what the hell happens to her. Anyways, they get swallowed by the fish, and this is like the big climactic point of the Disney movie.
Right.
But it's not here.
No.
They just walk out. They literally...
What was the line? The sea monster.
While the sea monster was sleeping on the top...
water surface.
With its mouth open because it has asthma. They just walked out of its mouth. And then Pinocchio, like, weaves baskets or some shit to take care of his dad, and then the Blue Fairy's like, here you go, have a nice house, and you're a real boy now, because you're actually a good, kind boy who takes care of his parents in their old age, and therefore, that's what qualifies as a good child, and you are now a good child, and you can be a real child.
Yep.
It's been like 10 years since the start of this movie.
In universe. It's
In
been
universe,
like, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it might not really sound all that bad. Like, I don't know, or maybe it does. But, like, it's really slow-paced, and because it is directly adapting the book, you constantly get these, like, okay, we're wrapping things up now. Psych! No, we're not.
We're going to continue doing more things,
Right.
very episodically.
Yeah.
Again, I think this would have worked a lot better if it was trying to be a television show as compared to a movie.
Right. And if you're going to make it a movie, you need to change things so it's an actual singular story and not multiple stories that all culminate in this.
Mm-hmm. As for the animation itself, it was not great. It was very obvious, very, like, static animation. Everything was constantly moving. There was not a whole lot of holding.
There's not a lot of,
slow
like...
in, slow out.
Yeah, ease in, ease out on, like, keyframes or anything like that. It all just kind of feels like it's floating from one position to another.
And this is something that I know that Italian animators can do at this point.
Oh, yeah,
because they've shown
sure.
that they can do this, so it's a little disappointing to see that they haven't in this movie.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't necessarily a point against the film, but there's also a lot of obvious rotoscoping going on. And, like, they do a good job of keeping the character still on model. It's just more so that because the rest of the animation isn't that great, when they rotoscope...
It stands out.
It stands out because it's probably some of the best animation in this film. And you're like, and it's good because they were just...
It's just realistic.
Rotoscoping.
It's like the movement is
It's not
realistic
there
proportions as
to
compared
aid
to...
what's already going on, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I guess you could watch this movie if you want.
If you want to know what goes on with Pinocchio, but, like, don't want to read a synopsis or read the actual book, then, you know, I guess there's this.
Yeah.
But there's probably even a better version of a direct adaptation of the book somewhere out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe like a TV miniseries.
Mm-hmm. Overall, I just don't... Yeah. I thought this one was really dull. It was directed by... I'm definitely going to mess up this name, so apologies. Guilino Sensi?
Guilino Cenci?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
I don't know how to pronounce Italian, sorry.
yeah. And while this film came out in 1972, we watched the English dub, which was released in 1978.
Yeah. But it really didn't feel like they probably changed anything. In fact, it felt like grand swaths of the audio was literally just direct rips from the book.
Oh, like the dialogue.
Yeah,
and
the
such?
dialogue, it literally felt like they were just And then this is what was said in the book, so just say that.
Yeah, probably. You're probably not wrong about that.
Because it made some of, like, what they were saying seem a little off from what was shown to us. But it was the book, so... Well, guess what? We're staying in Italy again.
Seriously?
Yes. So we have another movie given to us by Anonymous.
Okay.
The same Anonymous. It's another Italian film, but they apologized for finding this movie for us. And scanning through
That's not a good sign.
And scanning through it, yeah, it's real easy to see why. So next time we're watching a movie called Robin Crusoe. Or Caruso?
Robin Caruso?
Yeah, from 1974.
Okay.
Prepare for bad depictions of indigenous people.
Ooh. Alright, well, see you then.
In the middle of the night, while the sea monster was sleeping on the surface of the water with its mouth open because it suffered from asthma, Pinocchio and Geppetto succeeded in escaping by jumping into the sea. And luckily, by following...